Hello, welcome back to Beyond the Cowl. We are continuing Members Month today, and we are making a mixed granny square toddler blanket today, designed by the Coxy lady, our friend Chris. So she has designed the idea of this blanket. It does contain some basic granny squares, the basic granny square, the solid granny square, and a couple of others that we did in the 2018 cowl last year. There will be a link in the description below to the 2018 granny square cowl Facebook page, where you can find those patterns, and there will also be some links in there for the videos for how to make the particular squares that Chris has used. And I'm going to show you some of those today as well, ones that there aren't already videos for. Okay, so just a couple of things to tell you before we start. Is Chris used a 5mm hook and DK light worsted weight yarn, and her squares came out at about 6 inches. Now I've used DK yarn, so the same type of yarn, but I used a 4.5mm hook, and mine have come out a little bit bigger than 6 inches. I think they're about 6.5 inches actually. So depending on what hook and yarn you use, they will come up at around 6 inches. But if you use the same hook size and the same yarn weight for all of your squares, then they should come up at around the same size as each other. So even if they're 5 inches, 7 inches, and ours are about 6, it doesn't matter if yours are a different size. They will all, as long as your squares are all the same, that's the main thing for this. So don't worry if yours measure differently to ours, as long as your squares all measure the same. That's the main thing to tell you about this. I have got my Happy Sheep yarn today. This video is not sponsored, it just happens to be one of my favourite yarns. I've got a few favourites, but this is one of them. It's nice and squishy. And Chris, in her blanket, she used 2 colours at a time. She used a pale pink and a bright pink for a girl's blanket, and a blue and a green together for a boy's blanket. So I've gone along with that in that I've used a denim blue and a grey for the squares, and then I think Chris used her 2 colours for joining and for the border. I'm just going to use a pale blue to join and edge. Okay, you can do this in as many colours as you like. There are some layout ideas and how to lay out your colours and things in the pattern for this. If you look in the Facebook group Beyond the Cowl, there's a link in the description. If you look there, there will be a file that you can download and have a look at the layouts and all the written instructions there to give you an idea. So hopefully that all makes sense. And the only other thing to say before we get started is just grab your yarn, whatever yarn you want to use today. Grab your hook and grab some scissors and maybe grab a cup of tea or coffee, and let's get started. Okay, let's have a look at the actual squares then. So they are all based on the basic granny and a solid granny square. Okay, now if you've crocheted for some time, you will most likely be familiar with the basic granny square. Okay, so I've got one here, look, basic granny square. Okay, so we have a tutorial for this in the 2018 granny square cowl, which was our group last year. It's still functioning now, so go and join that if you haven't already. 365 plus patterns there from last year. So this was number 1 from last year, so go and have a look at the group if you want the written pattern, or for a video tutorial, go and have a look at that. Links for all of these squares that I'm mentioning are in that description below. Look at the Facebook group for the written pattern and click on the YouTube link for the video. So basic granny square, you probably know how to do it already, and we are doing 6 rounds on all of the squares. We're doing 6 rounds, and all of the stitch counts of the squares will be the same at the end. Okay, which is great. For joining, it's perfect. So basic granny square. Have a look at the written pattern for this blanket, and you'll see how many squares Chris actually used in the end. I'm just using one of each colour just for purposes of demonstration today. Okay, so basic granny, and then number 3 in the cow was the solid granny. Okay, solid granny, again 6 rounds. You're probably familiar with that as well if you've crocheted for a while. Otherwise, have a look at the links below. So basic granny, solid granny. The rest are now a combination of those 2 patterns together. So the next one is this one, which is the half and half square, and this was number 161 last year, and this is half solid and half granny. Okay, and you can see it's not quite square, it kind of goes in like this. Okay, sort of goes along, but all you need to do is just give it a tweak, give it a stretch, and it will become more square. And as you're joining it together, it will become more square anyway. The joining stitches will pull that out. So that's 161. Again, have a look at the link below for instructions on how to make that square. And then the 3 that I'm going to show you today, this one is based on the simple square, which was 363. Chris has modified this slightly, and the pattern file, the blanket file, tells you how she modified it, and I'm going to take you through how she did that today as well. Okay, so I will show you how this was made. And if you want to look at the original, it was number 363. Then there's this one, which was Chris's own design. She kind of came up with this format. She has 4 rounds of basic granny and then 2 rounds of solid granny. Okay, and she also said that if you wanted, you know, remember, you can change this up how you like. You could do 3 and 3 or 2 and 4, however you like. We're just, for purposes of this one, we're calling it the 4-2. That's the kind of name we're giving it, the 4-2. So I'll show you how to do that one, and then this one, which is a little like the half and half, but it's quarters. We've got 2 quarters of solid and 2 quarters of basic. So I will also show you how to make that one as well. So in this simple square, if you're thinking, well, that's not really basic or solid, it's solid on every other round, and then in between it's a bit like the basic. Not quite, but a bit like. So we're going to have a look at these 3 today. So I'm going to get my grey yarn and show you how we're going to do them. Okay, so the first square we're going to make is the modified simple square. This one here. So you want to start with either a magic ring or chain 4 and make a ring, or you can chain 5, whatever suits you. But I would say, however you start one square, I would start all your squares the same. Okay, try and keep them as uniform as possible, apart from where we tell you to modify. So we're going to start as per a basic granny, and this is how all the squares start, I think. So chain 3 as a double crochet, or you could do a standing, and then 2 more double crochets in that ring. Now if I go a bit too fast, just press that pause button, or up in the top you'll see some dots. You can slow the video down. Don't be afraid to do that if I go a bit fast, but because these are fairly basic squares, I'm not going to go as slow as I would if I was doing a very basic beginners video. Okay, and then chain 2 for the corner, and then 3 more double crochet into the ring. Okay, chain 2 for the corner, 3 more double crochet, chain 2 for the corner, 3 more double crochet, and chain 2 for the last corner, and then join to the top, oops, of your chain 3 to finish that round. And there we go, 4 little clusters for our first round. So for round 2 we are going to do it as a solid granny round. So chain 3 and then double crochet in the next stitch, and double crochet in the next, and then at the corner 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, and then 1 stitch in each, all double crochets, and then in the corner 2 double crochet, chain 2, some more yarn, so 2 double crochet, chain 2, and 2 more double crochet. And then you're going to continue this round exactly the same, 1 double crochet in each stitch, 2 stitches, chain 2, 2 stitches, 1 in each stitch, and then another corner, and then join to the top of your chain 3, and I will see you at the end of this round. Okay, there we go. I'm sorry I hadn't zoomed the camera in before. There we go, there's round 2. So now for round 3 we are going to chain 3, and then we're going to chain an extra, so this is for our double crochet, and then we're going to chain an extra one which counts as a chain 1 space, and then we're going to skip the next stitch and then do a double crochet in the next, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet in the next, and then do your corner, no chain, just straight into the corner as 2 double crochet, chain 2 and 2 double crochet, and we're doing the corners like that every single round, 2 stitches, chain 2 and 2 stitches, okay, and then we're going to do a stitch in the next stitch, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet in the next, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet in the next, oops, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet in the next, and then you are back at your corner. So the corner, as usual, 2 double crochet, chain 2 and 2 more double crochet, okay, and then you're going to continue in the same way, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, all the way around, and when you come back to where you started you're going to slip stitch in the 3rd chain up, leaving 1 chain as your chain 1 space, okay. I'll see you at the end of this round. Okay, so I just finished with my double crochet in chain 1, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain up, leaving that last chain as a chain 1 space, okay, oops, it's getting a bit tangled there. So there we go so far. Okay, so on to the next round. Okay, so we are going to do a solid round now, so chain 3 as your first stitch, and then you're going to do 1 stitch into every stitch and every chain space, so 1 double crochet into the chain space and then 1 into the next stitch, and then 1 in the chain space, 1 in the stitch, one in the next stitch, and one in the next stitch, and then your corner of 2 stitches, chain 2 and 2 more stitches. Okay, do that last stitch there. Okay, and then 1 into every stitch. So you've got 3 stitches first, and then 1 in the space. 1 in the stitch, 1 in the space, 1 in the stitch, 1 in the space, and then, oops, 1 in the last 3 stitches. And then you're back to doing your corner of 2 stitches, chain 2, 2 stitches. Okay, all the way around. Finish it when you get around to this side as well. You'll do your last one in the chain space, and then you slip stitch to the top of your chain 3. Okay, there we go, at the end of round 4. So now your last 2 rounds will be done in exactly the same way. So this next round will be chain 3 plus an extra one for your space, and then you'll skip a stitch and then do a double crochet in the next, chain 1, skip, double crochet, chain 1, skip, double crochet. Okay, and then you will do your last round as a solid round, just as we've done on this one here, 1 into each stitch and 1 into each space, and you will finish up with this. Let me zoom out. Oops. There we go. So you will finish up with this. You can see this one, we have got to this round here. So you're just going to do 1 more open round and then a solid round. Okay, so I'm going to finish up mine, and then I'll see you when I've finished. And there we go. There's my finished simple square, modified simple square. So I've got my blue and my grey now. So let's move on to the next square. I've got 2 more to show you how to do. So let's move on to this one that we're calling 4-2, basic and solid. So I'm not going to show you how to do the basic granny, because I've given you the links down there, and assuming that you know how to make a basic granny anyway. So you want to do 4 rounds of the basic granny square. Okay, 4 rounds of the basic granny, and then I will see you when you've done the 4th round. When you've done the 4th round, don't slip stitch across to the corner this time. Just finish with your slip stitch into the top of your chain 3, and then I'll join you to do the last 2 rounds. So 4 rounds of basic granny, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, here are my 4 rounds of basic granny. So we are now going to add 2 rounds of solid granny. So you should have your slip stitch in the top of your chain 3, and now instead of slip stitching across to the corner, we're going to chain 3 as a double crochet, and then double crochet in the next stitch and a double crochet in the 3rd stitch. And then in the corner, 2 double crochet, chain 2 and 2 more double crochet. Okay, and then we're going to work along the side. We're going to do 1 double crochet into each of these next 3 stitches. And then 1 into the space between these clusters, and then 1 into each of the next 3 stitches, and 1 into the space, 1 into each stitch, one into the space, 1 into each stitch, and then back to the corner. So continue this all the way along. Do your corner of 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, and then 1 into each stitch, 1 in the space, 1 in each stitch, 1 in the space, all the way along. And if you want to count them, no, I can't tell you how many there would be. I was going to. I can. There will be 19 stitches on your row. So when you count the 2 stitches here, you'll count 2 and then all the rest and then another 2, and that will be 19. Okay, so 19 on each side. Okay, do that and then repeat the next round as a basic granny round, and that will be 23 stitches on each round. So 19 on each side and then 23 on the final side. Okay, I'll see you after these 2 rounds. And there we go. There is my 4-4-2 finished with a nice solid edge, which is what Chris said she wanted for her square. She wanted it to have a nice solid edge. So there we go. That's that one. And we have, says my blue. So we have 1 more left to do, and that's the quarter triangles. So we're going to have a look at this one. This one is probably the more complex. None of them are very tricky, but this one is possibly slightly more complex because you're changing each time. So let's have a look at this one. Okay, now the main thing to remember when we're doing these quarters is that we work per side. Okay, so we'll work a side, including the corner, and then we'll do our chain for the corner, and then it will become the next side. Okay, and then we'll work the side, including the corner stitch, and then the chain of the corner. Once we do the chain of the corner, it becomes the next side, and that's how I found it to be the easiest way to remember what you're doing at your corner. Okay, because for a basic granny square, our corner is 3 stitches, chain 2, 3 stitches. For the solid granny square, we do 2 stitches, chain 2, 2 stitches. Okay, but on each corner of this square, we're only doing half of a corner. So half of this corner here is the basic, so 3 stitches, and then the chain, and then the 2 stitches of the solid. Okay, so I will explain that further as we go, but just remember we are looking at it per side, and each corner is split in 2 from the side. Okay, so if you make a chain at the corner, that's when you change what stitch you're going to work on. So keep pushing this away. The very first round is as any other square that we've done. It's 3 chain 2, 3 chain 2, 3 chain 2, 3 chain 2, and slip stitch to the first chain 3. Okay, so make that first round. You'll be doing that in your sleep soon, because that's how we started every square in this blanket. So do your first round of those 4 clusters, and then I'll see you back. Okay, here's my first little round. Now, I like to always start this particular square with the granny square round, because it means I can slip stitch across and do my first corner, so all of it stays in the corner of my starting. Okay, if you start with the solid, you'll have your joining line up the middle, which is fine if that's what you want, but I prefer to do it starting with my basic round. Okay, so I can slip stitch and keep all of that joining and everything in the corner. So to start our basic round, we're going to start as per a usual granny square. So slip stitch into those next 2 stitches and then into your corner. Okay, and then we're going to chain 3 and do 2 more double crochet, and then chain 2. Okay, chain 2 means we are turning for the next side. So for the next side, I've confused myself here. For the next side, we are going to do 2 double crochet, and then we're going to do 1 into each of the next 3 stitches. Okay, and then 2 into our corner, chain 2. Chain 2 means, if we look at this side, we have, focus camera, we have our 2 stitches, then 1 in each, and our 2 at the next corner. So this means we turn, and we're going to start the next granny side. So that means we do 3 stitches in our corner. So 3 stitches. Try and get some more yarn. Three stitches there. Okay, now we're still on our granny square side, so we are going to chain 1 to take us across, and then 3 double crochet in the corner. If you don't usually chain 1 to take you across, then don't do the chain 1. Entirely up to you, but if you don't normally do it, then you don't have to do it now. Okay, so then we chain 2. So we have our granny side with our 2 corners. So now we've done our chain 2, so we're going to turn and do 2 stitches for our solid side. Okay, and then 1 into each of the next 3. And 2 in the corner. Chain 2. So chain 2 means we turn our work, and then we're going to start or finish our granny side. So we've got 1 granny over here. I'm going to call that a granny. So we're going to do 3 stitches, chain 1 if you chain 1 normally, and then slip stitch into the top of your chain 3. Okay, so it might be quite hard to see this working up at the moment, but if you can see this, you've got 2 of what I'm calling granny. You've got a granny side, and then this sort of 3 here, this triangle, and then you've got a triangle here of solid, and then a triangle of basic granny, and then a triangle of solid here. Okay, if ever you hear me just call it granny, that means I'm referring to the basic. I sometimes just call this granny, but I mean basic granny. Okay, so moving along, I'm going to show you another round or 2. So slip stitch across to the corner. So you see, this is why I like to start with the basic granny side, because it just makes it so much neater. Okay, so then we're going to do the first basic granny corner, so that's 3 stitches, so chain 3 for the first, and then 2 double crochet, chain 2, which means we're now onto the next side, so we've done basic, so now it's solid, so 2 stitches. Okay, and then 1 into every stitch. Just like so. And then we have to finish by doing our corner. So 2 stitches in the corner, chain 2, So chain 2 means we change. So we've done 2 for the solid, so now we're on to the basic granny side. So 3 stitches. Don't you hate it when you trap the yarn under your arm or somewhere? You know there's plenty, but it's trapped. So annoying. Okay, so you've done your 3, so then chain 1 if you chain 1, and then we do 3 into the next space. You know how to do a basic granny if you've got this far in the video. Okay, chain 1, and then we do the next corner. So we're doing our granny side, so we're doing 3 stitches. Chain 2. Chain 2 means change to the next side. So we're now onto our solid side. So 2 stitches in that corner. 1 stitch in each stitch along. You probably now see how this is working. So you can see you just have to have your wits about you and think. Remember that you're changing sides every time you do that chain. You are changing sides. So we're doing this final corner. That was our solid side. So I just did 2 double crochet. Chain 2. Chain 2 means change. So we do a basic granny corner or side. So 3 stitches. Chain 1. And then 3 into the next space. And then chain 1 if you do, and then slip stitch to the top of your first chain. And there we go. So we've now done 3 rounds. So you can see this working up nicely. We've got the triangles forming nicely there and here and here. Okay, so I'll get you started on the next round and then it will be over to you. So for the next round, slip stitch across to your corner. And this is the basic granny side. So in the corner we're going to do 3 stitches, chain 2. Chain 2 means change, so we change from basic to solid, which is 2 stitches, and 1 in each stitch across. You hear my fan whirring away in the background, I'm sure. I thought the British heat wave was over, but today we had another slight heat wave. For those of us that don't like the heat, I'm going to call it a heat wave. So it was time to put the fan back on. So autumn will soon be here. Okay, so we are at the corner, so we're on the solid corner, so 2 stitches, just like so. We have our solid side done. Chain 2. Chain 2 means change, so we're changing from solid to basic, so 3 stitches. What have I done here with my yarn? It's not caught under my arm, but I somehow got a knot. Okay, there we go, sorted. So 3 stitches for the granny side. Chain 1, 3 stitches in the space. As you know already, chain 1, 3 stitches in the next space. Oops. There we go, chain 1, and in our corner we are on the basic side, so 3 stitches, chain 2, change to solid, 2 stitches in that corner. Okay, so we have 3 and 2, and then you are going to continue along, 1 in each stitch for your solid side, which you know anyway, and then you're going to finish with the solid corner, 2 stitches, chain 2, chain 2, change to doing your granny side, so 3 stitches in the corner, and then complete your side as so. So that is how you do the quarters. You just change when you do the chain 2. Okay, so chain and change from basic to solid, chain and change from solid to basic, basic along, basic, chain, change to solid, solid along, solid corner, chain and change to basic. And that is it. So work this up for 6 rounds, as all the other squares are 6 rounds, and you should have 23 stitches on your solid side, 23 stitches at the end of round 6. So I'm going to finish this one and then I'll meet you back here. There we go. There is the quarter triangle square finished. 6 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just making sure there. So there we go, and with doing those basic granny corners first, it just makes a nice neat edge rather than a seam up the middle. So we have blue and grey now. So I've now got 2 of each square. The last thing to do is to sew in your ends. Okay, sew in your ends. When you're sewing your ends in, just avoid using the top of the stitches. If you usually sew your ends in along the top of the stitches, then just avoid that and go down the bottom instead, because you'll need the tops of these stitches to sew your, or to crochet your squares together. So just avoid the tops. Okay, just weave in further down. Okay, so I'm just going to do mine and then I will get back to you. And I would recommend, if you are making several of the same square, several of each square, that maybe you do all of one pattern and then you sew the ends in of those, and then you move on to the next pattern and then sew the ends in. If you wait until you've got all sort of 48 squares or even all 12 squares, you'll have a lot of ends to deal with. Some of us do quite like sewing in ends, but sometimes we just want to get to the next part of the work. So sew those ends in as you go, and it will save you a lot of work later, or a big bulk of work later. So I'm just going to sew these last 3 ends in, the 3 that I've shown you, and then I'll come back to you and we'll get joining.